Today's title is True Democracy That Attends Heaven. True Mother devoted her entire life for a truly peaceful world and says that Korean democracy should not treat me like this. Is this all that Korean democracy does or has? These words are very serious. Because true father, his entire life emphasized democracy is centered on God, not humans. And while Korea was distracted with pro-Japanese and anti-Japanese in communism and democracy, when there are so many conflicts, true father emphasized the separation of people and ideology above the separation of land. So coexistence and global peace, that is what true father always emphasized. In the midst of that, heavenly parents loving this land and choosing this land sent the substantial heavenly spirit, our true mother. So this land, if our true mother, who believed that if this nation attends parents, then they can become the nation that heavenly parents desired. And we ask, why is this happening? We won't remember. And we should not forget. 얘기를 듣고 차를 몰고 올라갔는데 20대 정도가 와 있었어요. So at this day there are about 20 buses. 20대면 40명씩 타면 800명이 So if 40 people fill each bus, then there's about 800 people. 우리가 혹시 몸으로 police officers. They brought so many people because they thought we would resist. True Father always said, 망하는 것이고 그러나 하늘은 절대 데모가 안 된다. 대회를 통해서 승리해야 된다. 그러셨습니다. Said that heaven's side must win through conventions and rallies. So we didn't move and we prayed endlessly for the nation and for peace. The broadcasting stations were also very surprised, thinking that since all of us are here, we would resist. Why didn't they resist? They would ask. Why didn't they resist? Because we truly love this land and truly love democracy. But September 17th, True Mother went here, the Seoul Detention Center. Members all around the world. This true mother being in the detention center alone, that alone makes us despair, makes us sad. But how hard is it for true mother? I want to show you. Our true mother is in a solitary room. And the length of the room is not even 3 meters. Not even 3 meters. And in that room, she only has the essentials. Cannot express with words. She is in a place like this. We True Mother was in a comfortable place where she could eat, although she couldn't sleep. But her being in such a place right now that is shattering our
그러면
hearts.
실제로 우리 어머님이 뭘 드시고 계시는가?
So what is our true mother eating?
이렇게 식판에 신지를 잡수고 계시는 거예요, 여러분.
She's eating with a tray,
우리 어머님이
like this.
식판에.
Our true mother. Like this.
정말 우리는 견딜 수가 없어서 구치소 앞에서 정성을
Because we couldn't
드리고
take
있습니다.
this, we are offering devotion in front of the detention center.
정말 이 순간은 저희들은 잊을 수가 없을 거예요.
This moment,
끝없이
right now, we cannot
외치고
forget. We are endlessly shouting.
그런데 여러분,
But ladies and gentlemen,
언론인들이 저한테 물었어요. 왜 이러는 것이냐?
media people ask me, why are you doing this?
우리가 지난 과거 한두 달을 돌이켜 보면
If we look back on the past 2 months,
5월 3일부터
From May 3rd,
이 내용이 40일 동안 나옵니다. 이 그림만.
these pictures came out for 30
그리고
days,
내용은
for 40
바뀌지
days,
않아요. 이 그림 나오면서
and the contents don't change.
했고 대대적으로 보도가 된 것은 5월 26일부터 융단
And from May 22nd, they really got serious. Why?
6월 3일이 대통령 선거가
Because June 3rd, they had the presidential election.
악용한 거예요. 그러면 실제로 무엇이 문제인가?
So what is actually the problem?
5개항 로비에 대해서는 이미 저는 많은 언론인들에게 오래전부터 10년 전부터 이 얘기 다 했어요.
The 5-point lobbying. I told this to the media 15 years ago.
그리고 두 번째는
And
여론몰이를 한 것이 권성동 1억 자금이에요. 저는 언론인들의
Next
이것이 사실이라고
is the 100 million won
사법적 처리를
political funds to politician Kwon Song-dong.
그러나 이것은 조직이 한 게 아니다.
So we're saying that we didn't do
이것이
this
개인이 한 것으로 어느 정도 추측이 되고 있다는 거예요.
as the federation. The federation did this, but did it personally. And we were raided multiple times, but there's no clear evidence.
그것도 모자라서 120만 입당서를 얘기하더니
And then they talked about
그다음에는 11만에서
1.2 million
언론인들이 저한테 해준
people joining the People Power Party
오후 3시에
in Korea.
어떻게 나올 수 있느냐고 말이야. 그랬더니 결국은
And
3,400명으로
after investigation,
됐다라고 이렇게
all they could find was 3,400 people who entered the People Power Party.
정치자금설에 대해서 확인도 되지 않는 내용을
And
근거 없이 쏟아부어요.
They're just making accusations about political funds of the amount of 10 billion won without evidence
결국 이 모든 것들은
or without
무엇
official
때문이냐?
reports. And what is the root of all this?
통해서 어머님을 그들은 붙들고 싶었던 거예요. 어머님을.
So they want to
우리나라 국민들의 의식은
attack mother through driving public
사고보다
opinion.
부정적 사고에 민감해요.
We humans are more sensitive
우리
to
조직에 지금도
negative than
많은
positive.
괴담이 돌아요. 끝없는 괴담. 여러분 우리는 그런 괴담에 속지 마십시오.
There's a lot of false stories going around in our movement, so please do not be fooled by those stories. And because there's so many false stories in our nation actually has a nickname of being the nation of false stories. Don't be fooled. And if you truly love mother, true mother, go all in on visual devotions. Then you can get access to pure and true information. During the Lee Myung-bak administration, do you remember the crazy cow disease? The nation was in flames, talking about not eating American beef. Some politicians would say, I would rather eat poison than eating American beef. But there's no actual evidence about this. And this was a false story.
그리고 여러분이 잘 아시는 성주의 사드 배치도 얼마나 시끄러웠습니까? 온 나라가 난리였어요. 그런데
In the
지금도 그
Songju THAAD
사드는
deployments, this
잘 계시더라고요. 정권이 바뀌었는데도 마치 자기들은 사드를 없앨 것처럼 철수할 것처럼 떠들더니
they're talking about
지금도 더 튼튼하게
getting rid of the
자리
THAAD,
잡고 있어요.
but they're standing
그리고
ever more
여러분이
firmly right now.
후쿠시마
And as you know,
오염수 사태,
the Fukushima
온 나라
polluted water
바다가 시끄러웠어요.
situation, the entire ocean
나간다고 난리였고,
was loud.
후가 되면 그 오염수가 한반도로 몰려와서 우리는
Korean people,
폐질에 걸릴 것이라고 그랬어요.
they said that this polluted water would come to the Korean peninsula and we would get parasites and diseases. But did anyone get sick of this? No, no one.
그들의 정치적 목적을 실현하기 위해서.
Why is this happening? It's because the people that are causing this want their political desires to come to reality.
본부장님, 어차피 이렇게 된 것
I heard
법원에서
Mr. An Yol-yeol,
가리십시오 그랬어요.
in this situation, let's just
저희들이 가정연합을
see what happens. Let's do what we can in the trial.
뭔가 의심스럽다 그랬어요 언론인들이.
The media people said
그
something is
증거를
suspicious.
보여드리지요.
I'll show you the
여러분,
evidence.
아버님께서 성화하셨을 때
When True Father ascended,
많은 언론인들과 정부에서 궁금한 것이 아버님의 증여세 상속세였어요. 아무도 한
The
명도
journalists,
없어서
what they wanted to know most was the inheritance of True Father.
만 있는 것이 아니라
And all I could tell them
언론에서 조그만하게
is that he had nothing to inherit. And
그리고
even
그때부터
the
한국
journalists
언론인들이
recorded like this,
달라들기
that
시작합니다.
he had nothing to inherit. He had no personal possessions.
정말로
Then the
문선명
journalists gathered here.
누구냐?
They start to ask, who
어떻게 살아오셨는가? 무슨
is Reverend
말씀하셨는가?
Moon
어떤 업적을 남겼는가?
and Dr. Han Nakja?
왜
How did they
평화를
live?
사랑하는
What did they
세계입니까?
teach? What accomplishments did they
왜
have?
전 세계
Why do they like
총재님 양이
why are they
천지인 참부모로
a
독생자,
peace-loving global
독생녀로
citizens?
모시고
Peace-loving global
존경하는
citizens.
것들을 3박 4일 동안
So 3 nights and 4 days,
교육을 받는 장면입니다.
these are the journalists receiving education.
이 자리에 계신 이기수 원장님도 강의를 하셨고
And
방탄일
this
총장님도 강의를 하셨고
Secretary Bang Sang-il
국군 회장도
gave
강의를 하셨고
educated,
정순 씨도 강의를
Age
하셔서
Tokuno educated, and President Lee Gi-sung even educated here. And they were inspired.
언론인들이
Until now,
취재해서 우리 기사가 나온 적이 단 한 번도 없어요. 한 번도.
the journalists never
그들은 일본에 가서도 많은 분들을 만나서 확인 작업을 했고 그리고 돌아와서 전국의 시도 단위
released something to the public regarding our opinion. But then things changed and they made the World Peace Journalist Association.
전국의 기자들 100여 명이 이 청평 단지를 찾아와요.
And then eventually about 100 journalists from Korea come to this Cheonpyeong complex. And what they're most inspired about is that nothing here was made or is in the possession of our true parents. Nothing is in their name. So who are these people? They would ask. So they would come to the 70th anniversary of the founding of our federation.
우리는 사실인 줄 알았는데 확인해 보니 진실이 아니었다.
And they would talk about the things that they thought they were true about our movement, but they would find out that they were false. It's hard to decipher from what's true and what's false.
그랬더니 정리가 돼 있어요. 한번 보십시오. 그것뿐만이 아니라 한국의
And not just
최고의
this,
대학 고대 총장이셨던 홍익
Korea's
총장은
one of Korea's highest
국무총리
universities,
제안이 있었지만 거절했지만
from
이분은
Korea
부모님의
University.
평가를 가운데 줄에 보면 이렇게 돼 있어요.
Ms. Hong Il-shik says this about our true parents.
한국인은 문 총재가 유일하다.
Reverend Moon is the only one who is respected,
정치에 휘말리고 싶지 않아서. 그리고 그분은 월간
is the highest person who is respected throughout the world.
국무총리를 하시고 서울대 총장을 하셨던 홍일식 총장님도 아니 이수성 총장님도
And even
오셔서 기가 막힌 메시지를 주십니다.
president from
그 안에 보면
Seoul University would share such opinions. If we look in the box, Reverend Moon Sun-young and Dr. Han Ak-ja spent their entire lives teaching about peace and love. They would comfort souls and give hope and encouragement to life. And this president,
언론인들은 이거 다 알고 있어요.
would share these words. So the journalists would know all this. So they would ask, is the president of Seoul University, are they part of the unification movement? Such amazing things. And
정말로 부모님 양 이분을 존경했고 아버님이 성화하신 이후에 어머님을 끝까지 모시고 어머님을 증거하신 분이에요. 그리고 또 증거하신 분이 한 분 더 있습니다.
there's also another person who testified her true mother.
여러분 이분은 누구냐 그러면
Who is this man?
우리나라 역사에 김자진 장군이라고 있습니다. 그분의 아들이 김두한이에요.
There is
그분의 수제자가 조일환, 조폭, 깡패, 우두머리입니다.
This guy
최고의
is
주먹이에요.
sort of like
이분이
a gang leader
원리
of
말씀을
Korea.
듣고
This person listened to the
책을 하나
divine
썼어요.
principle and wrote a book.
그런데 책 제목들을 보면은
And if we see the titles,
감동입니다. 한번
it's
보세요.
very inspiring. See the
일본에서 아버님께서 전국에 있는 주먹쟁이들 공산주의하고 싸우려면 주먹쟁이도 있어야 된다고.
if you want to fight with communism, you have to fight the heads. True father said this, and
1200명 주먹쟁이들을 일본 연수를 시켜줬어요. 그 주인공이 여기 계신 강상일 총장님, 그 다음에 우리 송영석
true father went after those who
수료를 받고 책을
had to go
썼는데
against attention seekers.
운명적인 만남,
So true father educated about 2,000
일본에서의
attention seekers in
세미나.
Japan, and
그리고
he also
이분이
wrote about this.
축복받고 싶다고 해서
And even in the
서울에
book, this person actually wanted to receive the blessing, so he actually attended
다 데리고 했어요.
the holy wine ceremony. And not just him attending holy wine ceremony, he also brought a bunch of attention
조폭을
seekers,
식구로 두고 있습니다.
and
우리가 마음만 먹으면
they all did the holy wine ceremony.
거기까지만 하겠습니다. 그리고 그 밑에 보면 3장에 모든 세미나를 마치고 문선
So if we can possibly witness all these gangsters that this guy brought. But anyway,
그랬어요. 그리고 우측에 보면
and if we look at the right,
부모님 탄신 기념식
it says
그리고
the
밑에 지상 천국을 펼치실 참 부모님 그랬어요. 이 말은
The
무슨 얘기냐면
coronation
지금까지 아버님은 단 한 번도
commemoration ceremony of the
인간에
true
대한
parents'
자비를
manifestation,
베풀지 않았어요.
and
그래서 늘 좌익과
true parents who established heaven on earth. These are the titles of the book.
정말로 하나님적
chapters.
마음을 가지고 사신 분이었고
So this is a person who lived with heart of reaching true parents, and when this person died, this is our funeral for him. If you look at the pictures, you can see President Lee Sung-nam and then Ko Sung-dong, and
당자 상자 일자 총장님도 여기
there's
계십니다. 여기 계셔요.
many of our
그때 기도하시고
great members and leaders here.
단 한 번도 아버님은
Not once, true father
대우를 하신 적이 없어요.
never discriminated.
그리고 부모님께서는
And our parents,
남미에서
true parents,
공산화가 시급하게
in South America, when communism was spreading,
끝없이
he
대안을 제시하고 그들에게
he endlessly
하나님주의를 설파하셨고 모스크바에
taught them about God and
공산주의가 어떻게
offered
들렸느냐는
solutions,
책자를
and went to
만드시기도 하셨고,
Moscow
일본에서 어머님 모시고
and said that
대회할 때
communism was wrong.
한국의 어머님들이 찾아와서
And
취재하는 장면이에요.
When having conferences in Korea, the journalists would come
부시 대통령
and question him.
모시고 일본에서 7대 도시에서 순회 강연하셨다는데 감동해요.
And they toured around even with President Bush in Japan. So journalists were inspired by
부모님
this.
가치와 비전에 동의하셨기 때문에
Why? Because such high people agreed
하실 수 있었던 것이죠.
with the teachings of true parents. That is why they're able to tour together.
미국에 가셔서 2만여 명이 모여서 있을 때 한국의 기자들이 따라갔는데 정말로 일본에서 미국에서
And
2만여 명이
when True Mother
모였을까?
had a convention with about 20,000 people in America, the Korean journalists would follow her to America, and they would question whether 20,000 people would come. And they actually did, and that inspired the journalists. And one another historical fact,
대한민국의 새마을 운동이 유태용 박사를 중심으로 해서 되어진 것으로 알고 있는데 유태용 박사보다 훨씬 4년 전에 우리 선배였던 한인수 선배가 대전에서 이 운동을 전개하십니다. 그리고 아버님께서도 그때 말씀하시기를 새마을 복지건설 복지농도원 준공식에 새마음 새사람 새가정 새마을 새사의 운동을 전개하셨어요.
so there's this Semaul movement, and
박정희 대통령이 한인수 선배님께
this was a movement
를 드리는 장면입니다.
of the presidents, but it turns out True Father also played a big part in it. And
38에 승화했어요. 그래서 그 운동이 주춤거리고 있을 때 박정희 대통령이 유태용 박사를 시켜서 전국에 발표하게 했습니다.
And when the person running this passed away, President Park Chung-hee sent someone else to continue this Semaul movement. True Father would say that this land was not be in poverty as the chosen land of God. So, True Father made many companies in this country.
전국에 만든 것은 모두가 잘 살기 위해서 만드신 것이다.
And True Father made all these companies so everyone in Korea could live prosperously.
총재님께서 구상하셨다. 언론인들은 감동.
And I would tell this to the journalists, and they would be inspired.
100억을 가지고 있는 정학재단이 없는데 100억씩 주신 것에 대해서 감동했고.
And they would also be very touched about the 10 billion won scholarship donation. And like I said before, living a life of selflessness and not having personal possessions, I like to share how they live for this land. In Kuri, when we were about to buy some land in Kuri, we're going to buy 10,000 pyongs. So that would be about 1 billion won nowadays. But I think True Father gave this away. He gave it away, wanting this nation to live well, wanting many foreign people to come to Korea. So
도시 환경 차원에서 아버님께서 승낙을 하셔서 운영을 하고 있어요.
True Father also got a lot of land and made them prosperous for Korea.
국비 도비 다 해도 175억이 부족하니까 아버님께서 쾌척하게 주셨어요. 그래서 이 연육교가 이어진 것입니다.
And True Father also donated a bunch of money for this bridge that you just saw in those pictures. That's how that bridge was made.
언론인들이 쫓아다니면서 취재해서 나온 내용은 없어요. 어디선가 준 것만 받아가지고 나오고 있는 거예요.
The journalists
준 것을 가지고 그리고 아버님께서는 또
only receive information and then upload it to the news broadcasting stations. They don't get those informations on site mostly.
미국으로, 일본으로, 유럽으로, 중국으로, 러시아로, 알라스카까지 보냈어요. 알라스카까지. 언론인들을 만나서 얘기하다 보면 우리 아버지도 다녀오셨다. 우리 오빠도
And
다녀왔다고
True
얘기하는
Father
사람이
would
한두
send
사람이
about
아니었어요.
100,000 Korean leaders to America, Alaska, Russia, China, Europe, and heaven and earth knows all the accomplishments of true parents. But how could Korea treat our parents like this? And the Peace Park that we talked about, our journalists were talking about this at the year 2000, and they all agreed that that would be a good idea. And other leaders also agreed that it would be a good idea. And our True Mother also was talking about it from 2015. And that is, we also tried to walk the path of peace in this way. And the journalists already knew this. So in Wolgan Joseon, they wrote an article making
통일교 그룹 차원에서 했다고 보기에는 거리도 안 된다 그랬어요. 거리도.
They said all the things that true parents wanted to do, making a peace park between North and South Korea and everything else, they said this can't be done within the limits of the Unification Church. And many leaders of America, they're very worried about the protection of True Mother. So right now, Newt Gingrich accused Korean government of trying to persecute and attack True Mother. And True Mother, she had a heart disease, and the government tried to sort of kill her, making her go to court, even though her health was so bad. So one YouTuber of Korea uploaded a video about Newt Gingrich saying this. And things like this happened in America. And this came on an NBC Net, which is a Korean broadcast station. So about taxes of the Family Federation, tax evasion. So that tax evasion was about $600, $500 at the time. And that was religious. They saw that as religious oppression. So he went to prison for that. So the Korean the tunnel between Korea and Japan, we didn't tell this to the government at all. And many journalists actually saw this idea as very positive for this nation. And many politicians actually welcomed this. Did they use this during the court sessions? No, they did not. So a mother, with confidence, she said she did not make any illegal financial transactions in front of the Korean government. Okay, March 6th. And leaders from all religions of Korea, Buddhists, Confucianism, they gathered into Buddhist temples, and they also went to Catholic churches. Why did these leaders go to these temples and churches. They went because of politics. Religious leaders didn't go to politicians. So politicians would come to these religions.
모르는 모인데 강하게 했는데 대선 진리의 회장인데 이 밑에 보면은 얼굴을 보는데 기억이 잘 안 납니다만 임명장을 받았어요 이 사람한테. 여러분도 기억이 안 나죠?
You probably don't remember this, but
그리고
this man receives a letter of appointment from the president, this old man in the yellow
임명장도 줘요.
clothes.
임명장도. 그런데 왜 그러느냐 그 말이야. 그리고
So why would they give letters of appointments?
대한민국이라고 생각하시고 아버님께서는 끝없이
So your father,
대한민국을 하나님의
thinking,
나라다, 하나님의
knowing that this
종이다라고
land
얘기를 하셔서
is the land that God had chosen and God had
나라라고 말씀하시고
nurtured,
유교가 났을 때 하늘이 보내서 왔다라고 말씀을
and
하시고
during the Korean War, said God had sent the 16 nations to protect this nation.
미화 1,000만 달러를 쾌척하시어 리트렌젤스 예술단으로 하여금 유엔 참전 16개
이 내용은 유엔에 참전했던 16개 나라와 23개 의료 지원국까지 다 아버님께서 1,000만 달러를 주셔서
So true father gave $10 million to the 16 nations that helped save Korea during the Korean War, and the journalists were very touched, asking, who is this person?
특집을 다뤘죠.
Then in 조선
울고 있다.
일보,
여러분 88 올림픽 기억나실 것입니다.
they broadcasted this.
미국과 러시아의 경쟁 속에서 88년도에 160개국이 올
So
것이라고
1988
예상했을 때 아버님께서
Olympics,
단호하게 160개국이 온다.
the 1988 Olympics, during the war between America and Soviet Union, everyone was questioning whether 160 countries will come. But True Father said that 160 countries will come. And so True Father gave us orders to prepare presents for all 160 nations. And True Father gave about 13,000 premium Korean clothes to these nations that came to the Olympics. So in any way, you cannot see these actions in a negative light. During the Olympics, True Father giving all these gifts, and when the World Cup came, although it's 32 nations, what place would Korea stand? True Father said, since we got 4th place in the Olympics, True Father said we're going to get 4th place in the World Cup. And no one believed him. And actually, Korea got all the way up to 4th place. And God said, True Father said this is a blessing from God. So True Father was always with Heavenly Parents. So he was a global citizen who loved peace. And for the peace of the Korean Peninsula, he had set the standard and took action. So True Father supported the UPF and the WFPF that are accepted by the UN. And President Nomuyon, no one
그때 아버님께서 워싱턴 타임을 시켜서 노무현과 부시의 같은 점과 다른 점을
No one knows about Nomuhyun, President Nomuhyun. So True Father used the Washington Times and made them write an article about President Nomuhyun and George W. Bush to spread the news of Korea. So this is the site of interviewing President Nomuyon, and here there's Secretary General Ban Ki-moon here. And people said that this is a person that can never be a Secretary General of the UN. I won't talk about the specifics, but True Father said that there's a reason
하면 문기방이다.
why he was going to be the Secretary General, because his name backwards is
해 주셨어요.
Kimun-pang,
그리고 이 나라 국민들이
문기방,
존경하고
which
사랑하는 김대중 대통령이 미국에
in a way kind of,
방문할 때도
if you interpret it, kind of means the reconciliation between North and South Korea.
애써서 망명을 해줘요. 애써서. 그리고 그들이 힘들 때 많이 도왔다는 얘기를 들었어요. 그리고 그분은 워싱턴 타임에 오셔서 박보희 총재님하고 많은 얘기를 나누셨고, 그래서 그 이후에도 한국에 오셔서
After that,
저희들의 행사에 이렇게 늘 찾아오셨어요.
yeah.
김대중 대통령께서
President Kim
6.25
Do-jung,
회담을 할 때도 저희들이 환경 창조를 많이 했다 하는 얘기만
during the
하겠습니다.
conferences of
그리고
about the Korean War, he talked about a unification church making,
대한민국 얘기 속에 보면
improving the environment.
아버님이
And
한중 사전을 만드는데 2, 3억이 필요하는데 그것을 어려워할 때 그 얘기를 듣고 아버님께서 2억을 주셨어요.
when the true father heard about someone trying to make a Korean
2억이 어느 정도냐?
and Chinese dictionary and supported
34평형 아파트가
about
300만 원이에요. 그러면 그때 그 당시
100 million won
10채를 주신 거예요. 10채를.
for this,
그것도 그것으로 멈추지 않고
for the dictionary.
사전도 있어야 된다 그래 가지고 다시 5억 정도를 주셨다는 얘기를 들었습니다. 그래서 현재
And it actually cost a little more, so he gave about
문선명
500 million won more
기부해 주신
for this
돈으로
support.
만들었다라고 명시히 돼 있다는 거예요.
And in the description of this dictionary, it
그리고
actually
그분이
mentions true
아버님께
father
우리들에게
support.
얘기했습니다. 한류의 원조는 총재님 양이분이다. 왜 60년대부터 전 세계 동일가 형제자매들은
So they say that the
한글
source
공부를 했기 때문이다.
of
그리고
the
홍길동
Korean
총장이
wave
가장
is true
감동한 것
parents,
중에 하나가
because from the
공산주의
1960s,
이론을 부시고 대안을 내놨다는데 감동했고,
the world was
그리고
inspired by
김일성
Hangul, the
주체사상에
Korean
대해서 대안을
language.
부시고 내놨다는 것에 대해서 굉장히 그분은
And people were very
감동했어요.
moved about true father meeting Gorbachev and Kim Il-sung. And how could he be so confident and so bold in front of such leaders? People said that this was done with his life on the line.
말도 안 되는 소리라면 나한테 데려와라. 내가 이 얘기를 해줄 것이다라고까지 했어요. 그리고 여러분 평화자동차가
So,
평양에 있을 때 노무현 대통령이 방북했을 때 찾아와서
When Pyeonghwa Ja동cha, peace cars, the company that true parents made, was in North Korea, President Roh Moo-hyun actually visited the company.
통일그룹은
And
지금까지 사건 사고가 하나도 없느냐?
the government had so many trials and errors, but Roh Moo-hyun president would ask, how is the
첫째, 절대 일이 안 된다고
Unification
뇌물
Church
주지 마라. 뇌물 주지 마라.
making such
지금은
accomplishments?
일이 해결될 수 있지만 너는 그 뇌물을 주는 순간 죽는다. 두 번째, 돈 심부름하지 마라. 남쪽에서 북쪽에서 주는 돈 왔다 갔다 하지 마라 그 말이야.
So President Roh Moo-hyun
세
would
번째,
emphasize.
교류를 천재로 해라.
True father gave
그래서
Roh Moo-hyun
교류했어요.
some advice. Don't bribe, don't exchange money with your enemy, and trade.
절대 구두로 전하지 말고 페파화하거나 녹음으로 해서 전달해라. 이
And
네
don't
가지를 지키면 문 총재님께서
send messages to North Korea
사실이라고 해서
by
저는 이
word.
네 가지를 지키고 있습니다라고 얘기했다는 거예요.
And
지금까지 부모님 양이분께서
if you have a message, have it recorded and send.
안 되면 문 닫고 내려와라. 그런 부모님의 철학인데
So that's the philosophy of our true parents.
왜 이럴까요?
But why is this happening? So President Roh Moo-hyun was inspired by this. And another thing, in 2005,
영남 5,000명, 이북어도민 5,000명을 임진각에 초청을 해서 10,000명을 모시고 만찬하신
they brought about 10,000 people to Imjingak, about the 30th parallel, the DMZ, and had a supper there.
어떻게 우리가 후손에까지 물려줄 수 있겠느냐? 통일을 해야 되지 않느냐 하고
So true father,
하셨어요.
he talked about all the sacrifice that went to this land and emphasizing that we have to give this land to our descendants. And how can we do that? Through peace.
누구도 할 수 없어요. 지금까지 이렇게 했던 조직이나 단체가 있나요?
So
없어요.
is there any organization that did what our family federation did? No, there doesn't exist.
대표, 예? 우리 서로가바라 같이 이렇게
And
대회를 하는 장면이고 피스로드를 통해서 그다음에 북한에
we have Peace
미국의
Road,
여기자가 잡혀 있을 때
and when there
이
was
해결할
American
수 없을 때
citizen
이것 또한
who was trapped
우리
in North Korea,
성도들이 해결해 줬어요.
our senior members
저청년 모국
solved this
방문
situation.
단체도 어려울 때 아버님께서 기획을 하셔서 저청년 모국 방문을 실현하자. 비용은 내가 다 될 것이다. 불쌍한 동포들을 어떻게 하냐 해서 모국 방문을 실현해서 많은 사람들이 찾아와서 감동적으로 만나고 울고 난리가 났어요. 어느 누구도 기획하지 못할 때, 생각하지 못할 때
And he also
아버님은 분단의 아픔을
True father
하셨어요.
brought families from North Korea and people from South Korea who were separated during the war and got them all together. So families would see each other and shed tears. So children will meet their parents, and the people from North Korea never knew that the people of South Korea were living so prosperously. So everyone was surprised. So Chulhan Tong-ah, broadcasting station, wrote an article about this. So True Father sent many leaders for the peace of this land. No one else could do this. And I will skip this. And another thing that the journalists were moved by was in 1988, he wanted to conduct a blessing marriage in North Korea. And Kim Il-sung actually approved of this, but our side wasn't fully committed to it, so we didn't really carry that out. So true parents also went to America, and to many leaders, and what the leaders, the journalists of America would all be curious about is the Washington Monument rally. And they say that the journalists say that they researched true parents' lives for months, and they couldn't find even a single dollar in their personal possession. So we'll skip the video because of the lack of time. So Mr. Park Dong-sun talked about this before his passing, and when there was a crisis in the Korean Peninsula, True Father sent Jimmy Carter and solved that crisis, and he said it was a good idea of Mr. Kim Il-sung, and Kim Il-sung had a meeting, and that actually was conducted. And True Father, what did he do in America? Why does America respect and love True Father out of so many religious leaders? Ladies and gentlemen, do you remember these pictures? On the right is Kim Jong-il, and on the left is our Washington Times, Chu Dong-mun, President Chu Dong-mun. Like this, True Father gave it his all. What do you think President Chu Dong-mun talked about to Kim Jong-il? About peace and unity of North and South Korea. And while they're
등장했을 때 그 안에 있는
having this
사람들은 다
performance
박수 쳤어요.
with North and South Korea, having this performance in North Korea, they showed a picture of True Father and Kim Il-sung. Everyone applauded.
누가 문선명 한학자 총재에게 돌을 던질 수 있겠느냐?
So through all these accomplishments, who can throw stones at true parents?
기가 막힌 역할을 하나 한 게 있어요.
And these little angels played a crucial role in what we do.
지난 10년간
이게 뭐냐하면 여수 엑스포 박람회인데
This is Yosu Expo.
아버님께서 리트렌젤스를 보내라 해서
They were struggling, and True Father sent the little angels to have a performance there. And
그때 언론에 리트렌젤스 전통 공연이
the journalists
카드로 등장했다는 얘기가 있었어요. 그래서
have reported that the little angels were their hidden joker card
장단을 해서
for the expo.
아버님께서 하셨고 그 이후에도 역대 대통령들이 다 이렇게 표창장을 줬어요. 이때 아버님께서 우리 쪽에서 정부에다 로비를 했나요?
And
뭘 부탁했나요?
many presidents gave
아버님께서 늘 하신 말씀이에요.
commendations
나는 이
to
나라의
the little
민족에
angels.
신세진 것 없어. 단 이런 자리 하나도 신세진 게 없다고. 나는 신세를 지고는 못 산다고 하셨어요.
And True Father said he is not in debt to this nation, not $1, not 1 cent. He said he cannot live with debt, so he always taught, do not get in debt.
북한에 탈북자가 생겼을 때 일본 정부에서는 동해상으로 내몰려고 했지만 아버님께서 반드시 구해야 된다. 해서 일본 세계일보를
And when there was a person that escaped from North Korea and he was
한국으로 돌아온 케이스도 있었고.
in Japan, True Father eventually got him to South Korea. And this young man was working in Asia Pacific.
죽은 순간이에요. 죽는 순간.
And
아버님께서 이걸 어떻게 하시고
he was kidnapped and he was about to die. And True Father said, save him. So Chairman Yang Chang-shik goes to Asia Pacific and saves him. And the people, the left bottom picture, two people beside this man died. So this man was very grateful. So above the authority of of this nation, how is the authority of the Family Federation stronger? Reporter Yong Tae-yong of KBS said the words that I just spoke. So, the 100th year anniversary of True Father's birth, many broadcasting stations talked about the life of true parents. There is no negative messages in these reports. And there's even a commercial about the only begotten daughter. We cannot advance alone. Together, we can accomplish anything. The future doesn't wait. Probably saw this many times. So like this, many broadcasting stations and newspaper stations, they always wrote about us once or twice a year. And they would have conferences with True Mother, and they would listen to True Mother's words and be touched by them. And these things, many reports were made from the past 10, 20 years.
총재님 양이분이 절대 그런 분이 아니다 해서 독생 여론까지 기사가 됐고
And they even broadcasted about true parents being the only begotten son and only begotten daughter as true parents.
일본이든 미국이든 다 감동하고 있는데
In Japan, America are also being very touched about the story of True Mother. And why is the Korean government treating True Mother like this? And when we're having events in Europe, they would record and engrave the words of True Mother in the hearts. So I like to share why True Mother is the only begotten daughter. So all these things were talked about before, so I'm gonna skip them.
한반도 평화 서밋을 위한 행사를 할 때
So when True
저에게
Mother
중계를 해라.
was opening the peace summit for the peace of Korea,
중계를 해라 그러는데 어려운 상황이었는데
True Mother asked me to broadcast it live, and that was a little difficult. So she said, broadcast it live online.
안 되냐?
So that was difficult. So she asked, can you broadcast it as a recording? And I also said that's sort of difficult.
내 힘으로는 안 되겠다.
So I thought, this is a problem I can't solve on my own. So I went to the Chonshimwon and offered prayer. I started Chonshimwon prayer,
정말로
sort of like that.
이 행사가 충분히 방송이 될 가치가 있는데
And I thought that
안 되는
this
것은 내가 잘못하기
truly
때문에
has value
생각하고
to share with the world, and not this
참석을 해서
not being
일주일에 한
broadcasted,
번씩
that's my
했더니
fault. So I attended the visual devotion once a week, and my ancestors would scold me. What is once a week? That's
두 번 가지고 되겠나?
not enough. So I
세
did
번은 해야지.
twice, but they weren't content. So they said do it at least 3 times a week.
월수금 참석하니까 사이가 비어서 세 번 하느니
So I would attend Monday,
다 하자.
Wednesday,
그리고 그때부터
and Friday.
언론사 국장들 본부장들
And from then,
기자들 350명 명단을
I would
만들고 202개 언론사를
offer calling out
만들어서
name prayers about the people at the broadcasting
허명
stations.
기도를 했습니다. 허명 기도를 하는 중에
And while offering these calling name prayers, suddenly, when I was the 30th day of my
똑바로 해라.
calling name prayer, they would
예, 부모님을
scold me.
메시아다,
Get it
구속주다,
right.
재림주다, 참 부모라고 똑바로 못하고
Why can't you say that true parents are the messiahs? And why can't you say that they are true parents? And why do you call them Reverend Moon and Dr.
그
Haksahan?
다음날 다시 가서
So the next day,
내가 웃으면서 이런 얘기를 했어요.
I talked to the broadcasting stations and journalists about
MBN에서
them being true parents and the messiahs. Then the MBN said they would look over the event, and in TV Joseon they said they would look over the event.
이분들이 저희들에게 금액을 제시를 했어요.
And then they offered us a price.
제시를 했는데 가장 저렴하게
And
정말로 이건 훌륭한 일이다. 이것은 중개료를 안 받고라도 해야 된다라고 생각하시고 1시간짜리를 TV 조선에서 4천만 원에 해준 거예요. 4천만 원에.
so they would
상상할 수
10,
없는 파격
40 million won. That is what they offered TV Joseon. That is very cheap
생중계를
regarding
했다.
broadcasting throughout the entire nation. And NBC
같으면
said they would actually broadcast it live.
좀 해주지.
So I thought,
고생 안 했을 텐데.
if you're gonna do this, just you should have done this, offered
그리고 MBC
these suggestions before visual devotion, because then I would have been a little more comfortable. But
중계했어요.
so we broadcasted all of these events. This is a miracle of the Chonshimwon.
현재 언론 환경으로 봐서는 절대 할 수 없어요.
If we look at the media situation right now in Korea, this is impossible. But at the time, I offered endless prayer,
이것이 다
name chanting prayers, and that was how this was possible.
그다음에 이걸 하는데 문제가 하나 생겼어요.
But while doing this, there was a problem.
이제 편집은 당신들 마음대로 해라.
I left the editing,
편집이 돼서
everything
일요일
to
날
them.
방송을 해야 되는데
So they were supposed to edit it, and then it was supposed to be broadcasted on Sunday. It was Friday. They contacted me.
보고를 했더니 천정궁에서 취소해라.
And I sent the contents to Cheonjeong, and the Cheonjeong said, cancel it. Why? Because when I showed them the picture of it, there's no message about who is doing this and why. And because it didn't have those essential and crucial contents, at Cheonjeong they said cancel it. So on Friday night, I called the broadcasting stations, we're gonna cancel. So on their side, everything was chaos. We did all the editing, we did all the work. So they would ask, why are you canceling? So I told them honestly. They must know, the world must know why and who was conducting these events. So you must put in true parents' names at least. So they laughed, and then they hung up. 30 minutes later, they agreed to put their names in. And then I bring this news back to True Parents, to Chun Jong-gung, and they said cancel it again. Because they only mentioned their names at the beginning. And Chun Jong-gung said they must add it at the end as well. So I contacted the broadcasting stations, and they said if it came out in the beginning, yeah, why not we put it at the end as well? So they agreed to our conditions. So there's someone who supported us heavily, but I will not mention his name because he's too famous. So when I was praying, True Father said, get this right. What can you do on your own? You cannot even complete your chores properly. So I went and offered prayers saying that this was a miracle, and this, as we can see, is impossible without the grace of Chun Shim-won. And the Peace Summit of Korean Peninsula was coming up, and I wanted to get this live. It wasn't possible, they said, because this was after the situation in Japan. So a month after I asked them the first time, I tried to get this live, and then they laughed and rejected me. So for 40 days, I would offer chanting name prayers of the broadcasting stations and the people who work there. And on a Saturday morning, I got this feeling, this sort of sense. Do the third time's a charm. So heaven gave me an answer that was suitable to me. They could have just said do it again, but third time's a charm, very catchy. So I went back to them again, and then they asked, why'd you come? And I said, I got a message from heaven. So on Saturday, they said they're going to contact me on Monday. On Monday, they didn't contact me. So I contacted them, and then they said they were going to broadcast that live. And this event was actually broadcasted live. Oh my gosh. So it's about 1,000 days since I started Chun Shimon Visual Devotion. And seriously, Chun Shimon Devotion is what makes impossible possible. Although it may take some time, I want to share this lesson with you. So this is a testimony of when I came here, but I'm going to skip that. I want to share about the commercial of our only begotten daughter. And with that, I want to conclude this report. So, one day I went to President Lee Gi-sung. I went to True Mother and I asked how long I have to offer this Chun Shimon devotion. And True Mother took a minute to think.